Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. We are now going to be moving on from the NBA and talking some NHL playoffs. I know that we're a little sporadic with our NHL coverage here on the show, but wanted to dive into it because of the fact that we have our first team moving on to the conference finals in the New York Rangers. They do so with a comeback win in the third period. It got a little bit scary for the Rangers in this series where they got out to a 3-1 lead. The Hurricanes took Game 5, and it looked like it was going to be headed to a Game 7 as the Canes entered the third period with a 3-1 lead. But it was the Chris Kreider show down the stretch of this game, scoring 3 goals in the third period, all of them at full strength too, no empty netters, so a natural hat trick, and he gives the Rangers the lead that they are able to hold on to throughout the rest of the game. And, you know, this definitely has to hurt. Brindamore talked about it after the game, that it was a super tough way to end off the season for the Hurricanes. Definitely have to feel like this one got away from them. They had a handful of scoring opportunities in both the second and third period to try and add to their lead, but weren't able to do so. Again, enter Chris Kreider, where he was tremendous, both in the 5-on-5 game, but he got one on a power play as well. And then it was Gaudreau putting a nice little good measure goal in as well on the empty netter, and the Rangers are advancing. Definitely New York is feeling itself right now. You have the Knicks in the NBA, and the run that they are putting together seems like they could be on the cusp of making the conference finals as well. They have their Game 6 matchup tonight. And for the Rangers, they are on the hunt where, you know, the Knicks has been this little bit of an underdog story, and, you know, late draft guys that have come together and formed this really good team unit. The Rangers have been a tremendous team all season long. Not that the Knicks haven't been, but of course the President's Cup winners in the NHL this season, trying to become the first team since the 2013 Blackhawks to win the Stanley Cup in the same season they win the President's Trophy. So definitely a lot to be excited about there if you are a Rangers fan. So they get a couple extra days off as things currently stand. They are awaiting the final results of the Panthers and Bruins series, which is taking place. It is a Game 6 matchup tonight. Bruins were down 3-1. They were able to take Game 5 thanks to some first period dominance that they were really able to sort of carry on with. The Panthers did end up scoring to tie in this game, and then maybe a little bit of a controversial goal for the Bruins in the second period where Charlie McAvoy was able to score. There was a conversation about a potential goaltender interference. I thought it was clean. I thought that there was a little bit of contact up front, but it was the Panthers player who knocked the Bobrovsky's stick out of his hand, and ultimately the Bruins were able to hang on in that game, despite making it maybe a little bit difficult late in that third period. But for the Bruins, they at least get to come back home tonight for Game 6. As things currently stand, Brad Marchand, the captain of the Bruins, he is being listed as a game-time decision. Feels like he is probably doubtful. He took that hard hit from Sam Bennett earlier in the series, so I don't think that he's going to be able to return. Would be obviously tremendous for the Bruins if he could, but honestly, I think that in general here, the Bruins are just kind of hanging on for dear life in this series, where they definitely at home have a good shot, but I do sort of have a hard time believing that they're going to be able to pull off the series comeback. The Panthers have now outshot the Bruins 175-107 through the first 5 games of this series, outshot them in every single game. Last game was the closest the Bruins came to outshooting the Panthers, where the discrepancy was just 29-28, but in general, the Bruins have been getting out to really slow starts offensively, a lot of costly turnovers, some misplays on the back half of the defense to allow a lot of breakaways, opportunities for other teams. This is dating back to the Toronto series as well, which, speaking of, the Bruins have been outshot in 10 of their 12 postseason games so far, including that 7-game series against the Maple Leafs. So I think that, again, Bruins, when I say hanging on for dear life, they are really doing so off of Jeremy Swayman, who I think has been tremendous for the Bruins so far in this postseason. I was a little bit surprised, honestly, that they stuck with him as long as they did. There was a big debate in terms of should they stick with the goalie tandem. Linus Ullmark was the Vezina Cup winner in 2023, and I thought that maybe they were going to go sort of back and forth. He last played in Game 2 of that Toronto series, and it has been Swayman since. Now, I don't disagree with it by any means. I was just sort of surprised that they didn't try and shake things up a little bit. I specifically thought that possibly after Game 3 of this series, where Swayman was probably the shakiest that he's looked up to this point, that the Bruins would maybe go with Ullmark. But again, either way, I think that this has been more so about the defense not helping out Swayman, the offense not getting enough production, and I just don't know if we can really see them just turn it around like that. Again, have the home ice to at least sort of maybe ignite the crowd and sort of build up some momentum. But I just think that on the front line, they are outmatched from Florida, and I expect this to probably end tonight. Now, maybe it goes 2-7, in which case the Game 7 matchup would be this weekend, I believe, on Sunday. So we'll see about that. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section. But again, I think that this is probably the Bruins just hanging on as long as they possibly can, and Swayman doing whatever he can to take them to the promised land, but I don't think it's going to be enough. In the Western Conference, though, we also saw the Canucks win in a late-game thriller against the Oilers. JT Miller scored the game-winning goal with 33 seconds left in the game. And against all odds, the Canucks have taken a 3-2 series lead. Headed into this conference semifinals round, the Canucks had the longest odds to win the Stanley Cup, in large part because despite having a better statistical regular season than the Oilers, they were headed up against a team that has tons of top-end talent, and they have done a really good job to end up sticking through with this. It seemed like last night could have been the turning point, but now the Canucks are going to have 2 opportunities to eliminate the Oilers. And from the Edmonton side of this, we've seen they have been very reliant on their power play opportunities in both this series and the playoffs as a whole. That's where we've seen Leon Draisaitl do a ton of his damage. But last night, we saw the Canucks were flawless on the penalty kill. The Oilers were 0 for 5 on opportunities. It seemed like just 45 or just 15 seconds into the game, unless it was 45. I'm sort of blanking. In the first minute, regardless, a pretty bad penalty from the Canucks getting a goaltender interference call. And it seemed like, again, that may have been a turning point, but they rallied back. The Oilers did score shortly after that, but the Canucks didn't get down, and they end up pulling away with this game. And it's been really impressive to see some unlikely heroes stepping up. Artur Silovs has been a little bit of a revelation for the Canucks, that they've been able to stick with him through this run, considering the fact that he played in just 4 regular season games this season. He's, of course, a rookie goaltender, too. I wouldn't say quite the same energy because of the fact that Binnington played the whole second half of the season, but if you go back to 2021, I believe it was, or it was either that or 2019, blanking off the top of my head, but when the Blues were able to go on their run, and Binnington was absolutely lights out throughout the postseason and really did a lot of the heavy lifting for that team anyways, but Seelovs has also been tremendous for them. He had a 42 save performance in Game 3, and last night it was good to see the rest of the Canucks team sort of step up to help him out and limit the opportunities for Edmonton, again, like I mentioned, especially on the penalty kill. So, as we've seen, though, Vancouver has done a really good job winning the 5v5 minutes, not on the penalty kill, not on the power play themselves, but it seems like with the depth that they have in opposition to the Oilers, who maybe are a little bit more top-heavy on their front lines, but either way, they can't get too far ahead of themselves, but they have to be feeling good, at least knowing that they have 2 more opportunities to close out the Oilers with a little bit of wiggle room. And then the final series here, we have the Avalanche, who staved off elimination on Wednesday night against the Dallas Stars. Stars led 3-1 in the series, and we saw the Avalanche finally take a lead in one of these games where through the first 4 matchups, it had been just about all Stars, and the Avalanche won Game 1, but that was coming off of a 3-0 comeback and a game-winning goal in overtime, so they led for 0 seconds officially in that game, and then in the next 3 losses, they were never able to hold a lead, but that finally changed, at least in the third period, where it was Casey Mittelstadt who was able to score the goal in that third period and end up giving them the lead. We saw defenseman Cale Makar put in a couple goals in the effort as well to stay alive. We saw the Avalanche's power play finally, again after a really rough stretch over the past few games where they were 0 of 8 on power play situations. In their 3 losses last night, they broke through with that with, I believe, a couple goals in their 5-3 win. But definitely a tough one for Dallas to let sort of slip through their hands. Now, at the same time for them, I think that they can't get too down on themselves. They've been tremendous on the road so far in this postseason, 4-1. They've struggled at home, strangely enough, 3-4, but Game 6 is going to be held in Colorado. Let us know what your predictions are for that game. But that is all we have on the NHL playoffs for now. We are going to be taking our next break, and when we come back on the other side, we're going to be diving into some NFL conversations. I want to talk about the biggest concerns with each of the Super Bowl contenders for the upcoming 2024 season. So stick with us, and we will be right back.